What if we told you that a 90s action movie not only predicted the future, but did so with such accuracy it's both hilarious and unsettling today? Demolition Man was more than just an over-the-top action flick. It was a wild mix of satire, dystopian vision, and bizarre details that continue to spark conversation over 30 years later. From forgotten plot lines to strange prophetic jokes, this film seemed to have its finger on the pulse of a future that's now closer than we ever imagined. Stick around as we uncover 20 weird facts that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this 90s classic. Fact 1. The original villain showdown. Originally, Warner Brothers envisioned a martial arts showdown between two of the biggest action stars of the time, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal, but both actors turned down the villainous role, leaving the studio in a bind. Enter Sylvester Stallone, who not only took on the lead as John Spartan, but also pushed for Jackie Chan to play the villain, Simon Phoenix. However, Chan's fanbase didn't want to see him as the bad guy, so the role ultimately went to Wesley Snipes. Snipes, known for his martial arts skills, completely transformed Phoenix into a manic, unpredictable force of nature. His performance clashed perfectly with Stallone's stoic Spartan, turning Demolition Man into a high-energy battle of titanic personalities. The film's energy was born from that contrast, making it one of the most memorable action films of the 90s. But what if we told you that the role of Lenina Huxley almost wasn't played by Sandra Bullock? Fact 2. The surprising casting of Sandra Bullock. The role of the optimistic cop, Lenina Huxley, was originally offered to Laurie Petty, fresh off Point Break and Tank Girl. However, after just 2 days of shooting, creative differences led to her replacement by Sandra Bullock. At the time, Bullock was still a rising star, but her charm and comedic timing brought something new to the character. Instead of just being a sidekick, Huxley became the heart of the film, a perfect balance between Stallone's gritty John Spartan and Snipes' chaotic Simon Phoenix. Bullock's performance not only reshaped the role, but also marked the beginning of her meteoric rise in Hollywood. Just months later, she would star in Speed, propelling her to stardom and making her a household name. Her role in Demolition Man was more than just a part, it was the start of a legendary career. Speaking of tough jobs, did you know Stallone was juggling 2 major blockbusters in 1993? Fact 3. Stallone's insane work schedule. In 1993, Sylvester Stallone was an unstoppable force, filming Demolition Man and Cliffhanger at the same time. Often, he was jumping from one intense action sequence to another, wrapping up one film's scene only to rush off to the next set for the other. Back-to-back interviews, grueling stunts, and sleepless nights became part of his routine. Despite the insane schedule, Stallone delivered 2 iconic performances that cemented his status as the 90s action king. His ability to maintain his physical and mental stamina during this period was remarkable, proving why he was the go-to action hero of the decade, even as exhaustion set in. Stallone's iconic intensity never faltered, and both films benefited from his commitment to the role. But it wasn't just the grueling schedule that made this film memorable. The set itself had some unexpected surprises. Fact 4. Wesley Snipes' unbelievable speed. Wesley Snipes' martial arts training was so intense that his movements were too fast for the cameras to properly capture. His kicks and punches were so quick that they ended up as mere blurs on film, leaving the crew frustrated and the editors with little usable footage. To fix this, the crew had to ask Snipes to slow down his strikes so they could be clearly seen on screen. However, even at half speed, Snipes brought a feral, unpredictable edge to his portrayal of Simon Phoenix. The result was a villain who seemed to move faster than anyone around him, making every fight scene feel chaotic and out of control. This unpredictable speed not only made Phoenix more terrifying, but also elevated the character into one of the most memorable movie villains of the 90s. But here's where things get really strange. Fact 5. The lost plot of Spartan's daughter. Early drafts of Demolition Man included a touching subplot revealing that John Spartan's daughter had survived the cryo freeze and grown up to join the underground resistance. In some early cuts, Spartan was even meant to reunite with her during the wasteland scenes. However, test audiences found the storyline slowed down the film's pacing, so the entire arc was removed during editing. Still, eagle-eyed fans noticed hints of the deleted plot, especially the strange chemistry between Spartan and Lenina Huxley. This led to one of Hollywood's weirdest fan theories, that Huxley was secretly Spartan's daughter. While that was never the intention, the lack of explanation in the final cut only fueled the rumor. What could have been a heartfelt emotional thread instead became one of cinema's strangest what-ifs. But there's more behind the scenes than just cutscenes. What about the bizarre lawsuit nobody saw coming? Fact 6. The unheard lawsuit and accusations of plagiarism. In the mid-1980s, a Hungarian author named István Nemeth released a sci-fi novel titled Fight of the Dead. The story centered on criminals who were cryogenically frozen and later revived in a future where violence was outlawed, a concept strikingly similar to Demolition Man. When the movie premiered in 1993, Nemeth was stunned by the parallels and publicly accused Warner Brothers of stealing his idea. The claim caused a brief media stir, especially in Hungary, where local outlets portrayed it as a classic case of Hollywood overpowering a small foreign writer. Unfortunately, Nemeth couldn't afford to take on a major studio in court, and the case quietly disappeared before it ever reached trial. Still, the accusation never fully died. To this day, some fans believe Demolition Man might have borrowed more than just inspiration from Fight of the Dead. And as if that wasn't enough, let's talk about how Demolition Man flipped the script on brand loyalty. Fact 7. Taco Bell views Pizza Hut. The international rebranding, one of Demolition Man's funniest and most memorable gags, is the idea that Taco Bell was the only restaurant to survive the mysterious franchise wars. In the film's futuristic world, every dining experience, no matter how fancy, is held under the glowing Taco Bell logo. But here's the twist. In many international releases, Taco Bell was completely replaced by Pizza Hut. The reason? At the time, Taco Bell wasn't well known outside the US, while Pizza Hut was a global brand. So, the studio shot alternate scenes and digitally swapped out the logos for different regions. This strange corporate decision created what fans now call alternate timelines, where Stallone's character dines on tacos in one universe and pizza in another. It's a hilarious example of how marketing can literally rewrite movie history. And did you know that one of the movie's weirdest predictions came from a throwaway line? Fact 8. Schwarzenegger's presidential joke turns real. In one of Demolition Man's funniest throwaway lines, Sandra Bullock's character casually mentions the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library, implying that Arnold had once been president of the United States. At the time, it was meant as a tongue-in-cheek jab at Hollywood's growing obsession with celebrity power, a world where action stars could one day run the country. But less than a decade later, that joke suddenly didn't seem so far-fetched. In 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger shocked the world by becoming the governor of California, turning a random line from Demolition Man into one of the most unexpectedly accurate predictions in movie history. He couldn't run for president due to being born outside the US, but the fact that people seriously considered it made the line feel prophetic. What started as a quick gag became one of cinema's eeriest cases of fiction turning into reality. But it's not just the big ideas that have lasted. Some of the smaller, stranger moments have taken on a life of their own. Fact 9. The Three Seashells. Mystery. Few movie props have sparked as much confusion and laughter as the infamous Three Seashells from Demolition Man. In the film's futuristic world, bathrooms no longer use toilet paper. Instead, a neatly arranged trio of seashells sits by the toilet, leaving both John Spartan and audiences completely baffled. For decades, fans have tried to figure out how they actually work, leading to endless theories, memes, and even convention debates. Screenwriter Daniel Waters later admitted that the idea wasn't based on any sci-fi logic at all. It came from visiting a friend's house and noticing seashells used purely as bathroom decoration. He thought they looked futuristic and tossed the concept into the script as a joke. Ironically, that small detail became one of cinema's longest-running mysteries, proving that sometimes the silliest ideas leave the biggest mark on pop culture. And finally, let's look at the lasting impact of Demolition Man on pop culture and the world of toys. Fact 10. The Demolition Man toy line. For kids, despite being rated R for violence and language, Demolition Man somehow ended up with its own children's toy line. Action figures of John Spartan and Simon Phoenix filled toy store shelves, complete with futuristic weapons, detachable armor, and even play sets inspired by the movie's explosive scenes. The irony? Many of these toys weren't even new designs, they were recycled molds from He-Man figures. So, kids in the 90s unknowingly played out battles between characters who shared the same plastic bodies as their favorite fantasy heroes. heroes. It was a strange case of Hollywood satire turning into real-life consumerism. A movie that mocked corporate control and marketing excess ended up being sold directly to children through bright packaging and action figures. Demolition Man didn't just predict the future, it became part of the machine it was warning us about. Fact 11. The Demolition Man soundtrack's unexpected origins. The iconic Demolition Man theme wasn't written for the movie at all. It actually began as a punk-infused track by Sting for the Police back in 1981. The song, with its rebellious tone and sharp lyrics, was later covered by Grace Jones before finding its way into the world of Demolition Man. For the film, Sting re-recorded a darker, heavier version that perfectly captured the movie's mix of chaos and satire. The transformation of the song mirrored the evolution of the film itself, from sharp political commentary to over-the-top sci-fi action. Its pulsing rhythm and edgy tone gave the movie an extra layer of irony, grounding its neon dystopia in the spirit of rebellion. What started as a punk anthem of defiance became the haunting heartbeat of a future gone wrong. But let's step away from the music and dive into how the film made its mark around the world. Fact 12. The title swap in Kuwait. When Demolition Man premiered in Kuwait, it wasn't called Demolition Man at all. Local distributors decided to cash in on Sylvester Stallone's fame by rebranding the movie as Rambo, the Destroyer. The logic was simple. Rambo was a guaranteed box office draw, and audiences would flock to see Stallone's name tied to the action legend. But what followed was one of the strangest marketing misfires in film history. Viewers expecting gritty jungle warfare were instead greeted by a neon, futuristic satire filled with cryogenic prisons, self-driving cars, and of course, Taco Bell dinners. Confused but entertained, fans began joking that the film took place in an alternate timeline, one where Rambo was unfrozen to clean up a sanitized future. The title swap may have been misleading, but it gave Demolition Man an unexpected cult following overseas. But the weirdness doesn't end there. Let's look at a hidden detail that predicted Sandra Bullock's future. Fact 13. Sandra Bullock's accidental career blueprint. In Demolition Man, there's a small background detail that most viewers missed. An old model bus sitting quietly in one of the police department scenes. At the time, it seemed meaningless, but in hindsight, it feels almost prophetic. Just 1 year later, Sandra Bullock would take the driver's seat literally in Speed, the breakout role that launched her into Hollywood's superstardom. But the coincidences didn't stop there. In Demolition Man's polished, corporate-controlled future, every restaurant is a Taco Bell. Years later, in The Blind Side, Bullock would play the wife of a man who made his fortune running Taco Bell franchises. It's as if her career path was hidden in plain sight, subtly foreshadowed within the world of Demolition Man. What started as a supporting role in a sci-fi satire ended up predicting two of the biggest milestones in her acting journey. Speaking of unlikely connections, did you know that Demolition Man was surprisingly ahead of its time in other ways? Fact 14. The movie that predicted our censorship-obsessed future. When Demolition Man first hit theaters in 1993, its vision of a future where people were fined for swearing or punished for speaking offensively seemed like pure comedy. The idea of verbal morality statutes felt like an over-the-top joke, a playful jab at political correctness and moral overreach. But fast forward to today, and that once ridiculous satire feels disturbingly relevant. From cancel culture to online censorship and speech regulation, the film's exaggerated future suddenly looks a lot like our present. Even the concept of sanitized language and hyper-controlled communication has become a major social debate. What Demolition Man presented as absurd humor has aged into something far more haunting, a prophetic warning about how easily freedom of expression can be reshaped under the guise of civility. But let's zoom in on one of the film's most famous and strangest elements, the Three Seashells. Fact 15. The Three Seashells, a mystery for the ages. The Three Seashells from Demolition Man have become one of the most infamous mysteries in movie history. In the film's squeaky clean future, toilet paper no longer exists, replaced by three shiny seashells sitting neatly by the bathroom wall. The movie never explains how they're supposed to work, leaving both John Spartan and audiences equally baffled. Over the years, this strange detail has taken on a life of its own. Fans have created countless theories, diagrams, and even parody guides trying to solve the riddle. Screenwriter Daniel Waters eventually revealed that the idea came from visiting a friend friend's bathroom that was decorated with seashells. He thought it looked futuristic, so he added it to the script as a joke. Ironically, that throwaway idea became one of sci-fi's greatest unsolved puzzles, an eternal question that still keeps fans laughing and guessing. But let's move on. How did this action-packed satire affect pop culture and even toy aisles? Fact 16. Demolition Man's bizarre toy line. It's hard to imagine now, but Demolition Man, a violent, R-rated satire about corporate control, once had its very own children's toy line. Action figures of John Spartan and Simon Phoenix hit store shelves in bright, kid-friendly packaging, complete with futuristic weapons and vehicles. The irony couldn't be sharper. A film that mocked consumerism and media manipulation was being sold directly to the demographic least suited for its content. To make things even weirder, many of these toys weren't even original designs. They were recycled molds from the He-Man toy line, rebranded with Demolition Man faces and accessories. Kids who played with them had no idea they were reenacting a movie full of violence and satire. The whole thing became a bizarre case study in marketing gone mad, proof that even anti-corporate messages can be repackaged and sold to the masses. But what about the world beyond toys? Let's talk about the legacy that Demolition Man left in the world of video games. Fact 17. The Demolition Man video game, a confusing ride. When Demolition Man made its jump from the big screen to the gaming world, fans expected high-octane action to match the movie's energy. What they got instead was one of the most confusing games of the 90s. Released for the Cines and Sega Genesis, the Demolition Man video game constantly switched between side-scrolling shooter levels and top-down maze sections. Without warning, players were left spinning, unsure of what kind of game they were even playing. Critics tore it apart for its chaotic pacing and awkward controls, but despite the backlash, it still managed to find a cult following. For die-hard fans of the movie, blasting through Spartan's dystopian world, even in confusing pixel form, was still worth it. The game may have been flawed, but it perfectly captured the wild unpredictability that made Demolition Man unforgettable. But the movie didn't just predict the future in terms of technology, it also had some unexpected crossovers in real life. Fact 18. The unexpected influence on NBA culture. Wesley Snipes' wild look as Simon Phoenix, complete with bleached blonde hair and chaotic energy, didn't just stay on the movie screen. It jumped straight into real life, influencing one of the most eccentric figures in sports history, Dennis Rodman. After watching Demolition Man, Rodman was inspired by Snipes' bold hairstyle and decided to bleach his own hair blonde, later experimenting with neon colors, patterns, and designs that became his signature look throughout the NBA. This unexpected connection between a sci-fi action movie and professional basketball turned Snipes' villain into an unlikely style icon. The Phoenix look spread far beyond Hollywood, becoming a global symbol of rebellion and individuality. What began as a crazy character design ended up rewriting the rules of sports fashion. And speaking of things that were ahead of their time, let's look at one final bizarre prediction from the film. Fact 19. The Schwarzenegger presidential joke turns real. In Demolition Man, there's a quick funny line where Sandra Bullock's character casually mentions the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library. At the time, it was a tongue-in-cheek jab at the idea of celebrity politicians, an absurd thought that an action hero could ever hold public office. But just a few years later, fiction blurred into reality. In 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger shocked the world by becoming the governor of California, instantly transforming that throwaway joke into a moment of cinematic prophecy. Although he couldn't legally run for president because he was born in Austria, the fact that people seriously debated the possibility proved just how eerily accurate Demolition Man had been. What started as satire became a real-life reflection of fame, politics, and the strange power of celebrity culture. Finally, let's look at how Demolition Man wasn't just a cult hit. It became a prophetic vision of the future. Fact 20. The prophetic future of Demolition Man. When Demolition Man first hit theaters, critics brushed it off as just another overblown 90s action flick, loud, goofy, and full of satire that seemed to take itself too seriously. But as time passed, the film began to look less like fiction and more like a roadmap for the future. Its vision of a sanitized world, ruled by corporations, where people are punished for offensive language and individuality is suppressed, feels hauntingly familiar today. The franchise wars, speech control, and corporate dominance that once seemed like far-fetched jokes now mirror modern modern reality. What was once dismissed as neon-coated nonsense has aged into a bold, unsettling prophecy. Demolition Man didn't just imagine the future, it warned us about it, and we might already be living in its world. Demolition Man wasn't just a wild, explosion-filled action flick, it was a movie that somehow saw the future with eerie precision. Beneath the chaos and neon spectacle lay sharp satire about corporate monopolies, government control, and the rise of celebrity-driven politics. What audiences once laughed off as absurd comedy has slowly transformed into a mirror of modern society. Decades later, the film feels less like science fiction and more like a warning that we didn't take seriously enough. From sanitized speech to corporate dominance, the world of Demolition Man might not be as far away as we think. So what do you think? Are we already living in the future Stallone tried to warn us about?